The Book of Life, Chapter 14. The coven failed the test. Vivian flung her satchel-sized purse onto the kitchen island and poured herself a cup of coffee. Is she a witch too? Chris asked me in a whisper. I am, Vivian replied, instead noticing Chris for the first time. Oh, he looked at her appraisingly. Can I take a cheek swab? It's painless. Maybe later. Vivian did a double take. I'm sorry, but who are you? This is Chris Roberts. Vivian, my colleague from Yale. He's a molecular biologist. I passed the sugar and gave Chris a pinch on the arm to keep him quiet. Can we possibly talk in the family room? My head is killing me, and my feet are swelling up like balloons. Somebody complained to the congregation about the covenant's violation in Madison Country. Vivian told us when we were comfortably enclosed in the sofas and armchairs arranged in front of the TV. Do you know who it was? Sarah asked. Casey and Linda. Vivian stared morsely into her coffee. The cheerleaders knocked us out? Sarah was dumbfounded. Figures, I said. They've been inseparable since childhood, insufferable since adolescence, and indistinguishable since high school. With their softly curling hair, blue eyes. Neither Casey or Linda had let her witchy ancestry keep her in the shadows. Together they co-captained the cheerleading squad, and witches credited them with giving Madison its most successful football season in history by ensuring victory spells into every chant and routine. And what are the charges exactly? Matthew switched into lawyer mode. That Diana and Sarah have been consorting with vampires, Vivian muttered. Consorting? Sarah's outrage was clear. Vivian flung her hands up in the air. I know, it sounds positively lewd, but I assure you those were Sidonie's exact words. Happily, Sidonie's is in Las Vegas and can't come out in person to investigate. The Clark Country Covenants are too heavily invested in real estate, and they're using spells to try and shore up the housing market. So what happens now? I asked Vivian. I have to respond, in writing. Thank goodness, that means you can lie, I said, relieved. No way, Diana. She's too smart. I saw Sidonie question the Soho Coven 2 years ago when they opened up that haunted house on Spring Street, right where Halloween parade lineup began. It was masterful. Vivian shuddered. She even got them to divulge how they suspended a bubbling cauldron over their paradise float for 6 hours. After Sidonie's visit, the Covenant was grounded for a full year. No flying, no operating, and positively no extortionism. They still haven't recovered. What kind of witch is she? I asked. A powerful one, Vivian said with a snort, but that's not what I meant. How is her power elemental or based off of the craft? She's got a good grasp of spells from what I hear, Sarah said. Sidonie can fly, and she's a respected seer too, Vivian added. Chris raised his hand. Yes, Chris? Sarah sounded like a schoolmarm. Smart, powerful, flying, it doesn't matter. You can't let her find out about Diana's children, and with that Bad Seed's latest research product, and this covenant you're all worried about. Bad Seed? Vivian stared at Chris blankly. Matthew's son knocked up a witch. It seems that reproductive abilities run in the Claremont family. Chris glared at Matthew. And about this covenant you've all agreed to. I take it that witches aren't supposed to hang out with vampires? Or with demons? It makes humans uncomfortable, Matthew said. Uncomfortable. Chris looked dubious. So did blacks sitting on buses next to white people. Segregation isn't the answer. Humans notice creatures if we're in mixed groups, I said, hoping to placate Chris. We notice you, Diane, even when you're walking down Temple Street. By yourself at 10 o'clock in the morning, Chris said, shattering my last fragile hope that I was appearing to be just like everybody else. The congregation was established to enforce the covenant to keep us safe from human attention and interference, I said, sticking to my guns nonetheless. In exchange, we stay out of human politics and religion. Think that if you want, but forced segregation, or the covenant if you want to be fancy about it, is often about concern for racial purity. Chris propped his legs on the coffee table. Your covenant probably came into because witches were having vampire babies. Making humans more comfortable was just a convenient excuse. Fernando and Matthew exchanged glances. I assumed that Diana's ability to conceive was unique. That this was the goddesses working, not part of some broader pattern. Vivian was aghast. Scores of long-lived creatures with supernatural powers would be terrifying. Not if you want to engineer a super race. Then such a creature would be a genetic coup. Chris observed. Do we happen to know any of the megalomaniacs with interest of vampire genetics? Oh wait, we know 2 of them. I prefer to leave such things to gods, Christopher. A dark vein pulsed in Matthew's forehead. I have no interest in eugenics. You forget. You're obsessed with species of evolution. In other words, history and chemistry. Those are Diana's research interests. What a coincidence. Chris's eyes narrowed. Based on what I've overheard, I have 2 questions, Professor Claremont. Is it just vampires who are dying out, or are witches and demons going extinct too? And which of these so-called species cares the most about racial purity? Chris really was a genius. With every insightful question, he was delving deeper into the mysteries bound up in the Book of Life, the de Claremont family secrets, and the mystery of my own and Matthew's blood. Chris is right, Matthew said with suspicious speed. We can't risk the congregation discovering Diana's pregnancy. If you have no objections, Moncoeur, I think we should go to Fernando's house and salve without delay. Sarah can come with us, of course. Then the covenant's reputation won't be brought into disrepute. I said you can't let the Wicked Witch find out about Diana. Not that she should run away, Chris said, disgusted. Have you forgotten Benjamin? Let's fight this war one front at a time, Christopher. Matthew's expression must have matched his tone, because Chris immediately subsided. Okay, let's go to Sylve. I didn't want to, and I didn't want the Madison witches to suffer, either. No, it's okay, Sarah said, her voice rising. The congregation want answers? Well, I want answers too. You tell Sidian von Brook that I have been consorting with vampires since last October, ever since Satu Jarvin kidnapped and tortured my niece, Peter Knock, while Peter Knock stood by and did nothing. If that means I violated the covenant, then too damn bad. Without the de Claremonts, Diana would be dead, or worse. Those are serious allegations, Vivian said. Are you sure you want to make them? Yes, Sarah said stubbornly. Knox has already been banished from the congregation, and I want Satu's ass off of it too. They're looking for Knox's replacement now, Vivian reported. It's rumored that Janet Godey is going to come out of retirement to fill the chair. Janet Godey is 90 if she's a day, Sarah said. She can't possibly be up for the job. Knox insists that it's a witch well known for her casting abilities, as he was. No one, not even Janet Godey, has ever bested him when it came to performing spells, Vivian said. Yet, Sarah said succutantly. There's something else, Sarah. It might make you pause before you go after the witches of the congregation. Vivian hesitated. Sayadini has asked for a report on Diane. She says it's standard procedure to check on witches who haven't developed their magical talents to see if anything manifested later in life. If it's my power the congregation is interested in, then Sayadini Sidney's request really has nothing to do with Sarah and me consorting with vampires, I said. Sidney claims that she has a childhood assessment of Diane that indicated she was not expected to manifest any normal powers traditionally associated with witches. Vivian went on, looking miserable. Peter Knox conducted it. Rebecca and Stefan agreed to his findings and signed off. Tell the congregation that Rebecca and Stefan's assessment of their daughter's magical ability was absolutely correct down to the last detail. Sarah's eyes glittered with anger. My niece has no normal powers. Well done, Sarah, Matthew said, in his admiration of her careful truth evident. That was worthy of my brother Godfrey. Thank you, Matthew, Sarah said with a little nod. Knox knows something, or suspects something about me. He has since I was a child. I expected Matthew to argue. He didn't. I thought we'd discover what my parents were hiding, that I'm a weaver like Dad, but now I know that I know about Mom's interest in higher magics. I wonder if that doesn't have something to do with Knox's interest as well. He's a dedicated practitioner of higher magics, Vivian mused, and if you were able to devise new dark spells, I imagine Knox will be willing to do almost anything to get his hands on them. The house moaned, and the sound of a guitar filled the room with a recognizable melody. Of all the songs on my mother's favorite album, Landslide was the one that tugged at my heart. Whenever I heard it, I remember her holding me on my lap and humming. Mom loved this song, I said. She knew that change was coming, and she was afraid of it, just like the woman in the song. But we can't afford to fear anymore. What are you saying, Diane? Vivian asked. The change my mom was expecting? It's here, I said simply. And even more change is coming on the way, Chris said. You're not going to be able to keep the existence of creatures from humans for much longer. You're one autopsy, one genetic counseling session, one home genetic test kit away from being outed. Nonsense, Matthew declared. Gospel. You have two choices. Do you want to be in control of the situation when it happens, Matthew? Or do you want to get smacked upside the head with it? Chris waited. Based on our limited acquaintance, I'm guessing you'd prefer option A. Matthew ran his fingers over his scalp and glared at Chris. I thought so. Chris tipped back his chair. Given your predicament, what can Yale University do for you, Professor Claremont? No, Matthew shook his head. You're not using research students and postgrads to analyze creature DNA. It's scary as hell, I know, Chris continued in a gentler tone. We'd all rather hide somewhere safe and let someone else make the toughest decisions. But someone's going to have to stand up and fight for what's right. Fernando tells me you're a pretty impressive warrior. Matthew stared at Chris unblinkingly. I'll stand with you if it helps, Chris adds, provided you meet me halfway. Matthew is not only an impressive warrior, but an experienced one. He knew when he was beaten. You win, Chris, he said quietly. Good, let's get started then. I want to see the creature's genetic maps. Then I want to sequence and resemble the 3 creature genomes so they can be compared to human genomes. Chris ticked off one item after another. I want to be sure you've correctly identified the gene responsible for the blood rage, and I want the gene that makes it possible for Diana to conceive your child isolated. I don't believe you've even started looking for that yet. Is there anything else I can help you with? Matthew's brow rose. As a matter of fact, there is. Chris's chair thudded to the ground. Tell me Miriam and Shepard that I want her ass in Kingley Biology Tower on Monday morning. It's on Science Hill. You can't miss it. My lab is on the 5th floor. I'd like her to explain how my conclusion in science were wrong before she joins us for our first team meeting at 11. I'll pass that message along. Matthew and Fernando glanced at each other. Fernando shrugged and said, as if to say, his funeral. Just a reminder, Chris. The research you've outlined thus far will take years to complete. We won't be at Yale for very long. Diane and I have to be back in Europe by October if we want the twins to be born. Diana shouldn't be traveling long distance after that. All the more reason to have as many people working on the project. Chris stood up and put his hand out. Deal? After a long pause, Matthew took it. Smart decision, said Chris. Chris said, giving it a shake. I hope you brought your checkbook, Claremont. The Yale Center of Genome Analysis and the DNA Analysis Facility both charge steep fees, but they're fast and accurate. He looked at his watch. My bag is already in the car. How long before you two can hit the road? We'll be a few hours behind you, Matthew said. Chris kissed Sarah on the cheek and gave me a hug. His fingers rose in a gesture of warning. 11 a.m. on Monday, Matthew. Don't be late. On that note, he left. What have I done? Matthew muttered. When the front door slammed shut, he looked a bit shell-shocked. It will be fine, Matthew, Sarah said with a surprising optimism. I have a good feeling about all of this. A few hours later, we climbed into the car. I waved to Sarah and Fernando from the passenger's seat, blinking back the tears. Sarah was smiling, but her arms were wrapped so tightly around herself that her knuckles were white. Fernando exchanged a few words with Matthew and clasped him briefly, hand to elbow in the familiar de Claremont fashion. Matthew slid behind the wheel. All set? I nodded. His fingers pressed the switch and the ignition turned over. Keyboards and drums flooded out of the sound system, accompanied by piercing guitars. Matthew fumbled with the controls, trying to tune the music down. When that failed, he tried to turn it off, but no matter what he did, Fleetwood Mac warned us to stop thinking about tomorrow. Finally, he flung his hands up in defeat. The house is sending us off in style, I see. He shook his head and put the car in drive. Don't worry, it won't be able to keep the song going once we leave the property. We drove down the long driveway towards the road. All the bumps all but imperceptible thanks to the Range Rover's shock absorbers. I twisted in the seat when Matthew flicked the turn signal to leave the Bishop farm. But the last words of the song made me face forward again. Don't look back, I whispered. Sol in Virgo. When the sun is in Virgo, send the children to school. This sign signifieth a change of place.